Mariane Thorne pressed her palm to the girl's clammy forehead and felt nothing. No warmth to coax higher, no fever to draw down. No flicker of resistance in the silent pulse of flesh under skin. Selena's breath came in shallow catches, as if the air itself had grown too heavy to carry. "You're supposed to be asleep," Mariane murmured, though Selena's eyes were already closed. "You'll make a liar of me in front of the neighbors." The joke fell flat in the dim cottage, swallowed by the faint wheeze of the hearth and the rustle of the wind beyond the shutters. Mariane kept her hand where it was, fingers splayed over the soft brown curls pressed against the pillow. Her thumb traced a familiar freckle at Selena's temple. "If you were awake, you'd tease me for worrying," Mariane went on, because the silence hurt. "You'd say, 'Mari, you look like you swallowed a storm,' and you'd be right." Selena did not answer. Her chest rose and fell, slow as a tide gone out and unsure if it wished to return. Mariane opened herself to her magic. She let her awareness sink down through her arm, into her hand, into the small, fragile shape of her sister's head. Life usually met her touch eagerly. Rushes of warmth, the bright bubbling complexity of blood and bone and breath. Even in the sick, she could feel the strain. The body wanted to live, and she could nudge it, strengthen it, help it remember how. Here, now, there was only a thin thread. Selena's life clung stubbornly, but it guttered like a candle left in a draught. Mariane swallowed against the tightness in her throat. Carefully, she called a little of her vitalis forward, that soft green-gold current that had always answered her. It flowed from her chest, down her arm in a warm prickle, pooling in her palm. She shaped it as she'd been taught and as she'd learned alone, gentle, no forcing, no flooding, and eased it into Selena. Light, invisible to the eye, but bright as lantern flame to her inner sight, eased into the fading pathways of Selena's body. It chased emptiness, coaxed sluggish organs, kissed worn nerves. For a moment, Mariane felt the faintest response, a shiver along Selena's spine, a tiny increase in the strength of her heartbeat. Then it slipped away, lost like water poured onto dry sand. "That isn't how this works," Mariane whispered, fingers tightening, as if she could hold life in place by sheer will. "You don't get to refuse me." She pushed a little more magic, but the result was the same, a brief shimmer of improvement, then a flattening, like a sigh. She drew back, lips pressed together. Overhead, the last of the daylight bled out through the cracks in the shutter. Evening had fallen without her noticing. "Any change?" came a voice from the doorway. Mariane did not startle. She knew that voice, and the soft, careful tread that came with it. "No," she said simply. Her mother stepped inside, shoulders hunched against the cold creeping up from the stone floor. Lines that hadn't been there a year ago bracketed her mouth. "She looks peaceful," Elena said, as if that was something to be grateful for. Peaceful, Mariane thought, was what people said when they'd given up. "She's tired," Mariane said. "Healing takes strength. She'll wake in the morning." Her mother's gaze flickered to her face, searching. Mariane kept her own expression steady, her features arranged in calm assurance. Mothers were good at reading daughters. Healers became good at hiding from everyone, including themselves. Elena moved closer to the bed and brushed the back of her fingers against Selena's cheek. She didn't have magic, but a mother didn't need it to feel how thin her child had become. "Brother Alden came by," she said quietly. She held out a folded scrap of parchment with the monastery's seal impressed in wax, a stylized lily, petals open. Mariane frowned. "We've already tried their purifying rites. They did nothing." "He said this is different." Her mother glanced toward Selena, then back.
He remembered an old entry in the archives, something about soul-wasting sicknesses, something about balance. The word pricked Mariane's ears. Balance. Life and death, tide and moon, the old words all circled the same idea. What did the entry say? I don't know. He copied the page for you. Elena pressed the parchment into her hand. He thought a healer might make more sense of it than a praying man. The wax had cracked on one side, flaking against Mariane's fingers. She unfolded the parchment and held it close to the lantern's glow. The script was neat but faded, ink stretched thin across the rough paper. A diagram took up most of the space. 2 intertwined circles, one shaded, one bare. Between them, a thin line, annotated in cramped letters, Veiled Road or Bone Garden Path. Her heart thudded, slow and heavy. Read it to me, her mother said softly. Mariane swallowed and obeyed. When the border between breath and bone falters, the sickness of unmoored souls may emerge among the living. Her voice sounded too loud in the small room. No remedy of leaf or light can wholly mend this, for its root lies below, in the halls of rest. Only the touch of the underworld can restore what was stolen, yet the underworld does not give without taking. Elena's hand tightened in Selina's blankets. Underworld, she repeated, as if the syllables tasted bad. In rare cases, Mariane continued, because stopping would feel like admitting defeat, a bargain may be struck with the prince who tends the bone gardens. Life may be borrowed from his realm to mend the sundered soul. But he will demand payment, time, service, or vow.
Take heed, healer. To walk the bone gardens is to risk leaving more of yourself behind than you intended. Silence fell, thick and palpable. Somewhere outside, a cart rattled over cobblestone, distant and unreal. Mariane traced the inked circles with her eyes. The veiled road, the bone garden path. Stories from childhood tales rose unbidden. The Prince of Bones, the Keeper of Keys, the One who Watches. A figure spoken of in hushed tones at wakes, invoked in winter prayers so that the dead would go gently and stay gone. Mariane, her mother said, voice thin and trembling, you're not thinking. I'm thinking, Mariane interrupted gently, that this is the first thing I've seen that calls Selina's sickness by its right name. She touched her sister's wrist, feeling for the faint pulse there. Soul-wasting, not fever, not rot, nothing of the flesh. Her mother's breath hitched. Summoning the Underworld's prince is forbidden for a reason. It's not a sanitarium or a herb garden, it's death. And yet the page says his touch can restore what was stolen. Mariane met her mother's gaze. We have tried everything in this world. Maybe the answer lies in the one below it. Elena's eyes filled, but no tears fell. She had cried herself dry weeks ago. I will not lose both my daughters, she whispered. You won't, Mariane said. It came out too quickly, too fiercely. She softened her tone. Mother, you taught me yourself, life and death are part of the same circle. I have spent years on one side of it. Perhaps I am meant to walk the edge, just this once. And if you slip? Elena asked. Mariane didn't answer, not with words. Her gaze dropped to Selina, who looked almost like she used to when she fell asleep reading, jaw slack, lashes dark against her skin. Almost. If you knew where to look, at the hollows under her eyes, the two still hands, you saw the wrongness. I won't, Mariane said at last, because I can't. Her mother's shoulders sagged. That, too, was an answer. How, she whispered, how would you even call him? Mariane looked back to the parchment. At the bottom, after a line of cramped script, there was a smaller symbol, barely more than a cluster of ink blots. A key, she thought, a gate, or a seed. It says, on the night when the sky is without candle and the world tilts closest to the dark,
the path may open. A healer of strong vitalis may send her call along the veiled road with offerings of bone and bloom. She looked up. The moon is new tonight. Her mother shut her eyes. The cottage, when the lamps were put out and the hearth banked low, felt like a held breath. Shadows pooled in the corners, thin as ink. Outside, the village of Ashven slept uneasily. Sick news traveled fast, and Selina had always been well liked.
In the cleared space before the hearth, Mariane laid out what the text had specified. A basin of water, clear and deep. An ark of clean white bone. No scavenged joint from butcher's scraps, but the small, perfect rib of a bird, the only thing she had that felt pure enough. And a ring of dried blooms from her healer's stores. Feverfew, ghost lily, night flower, petals pale as moth wings. Her mother sat on a stool in the corner, fingers wrapped tight around a string of prayer beads, lips moving soundlessly. Selina rested in the small room beyond, door ajar so Mariane could hear her if anything changed. "You don't have to watch," Mariane said quietly. "If it goes wrong." "If it goes wrong, I will be here," Elena replied without opening her eyes. "Don't ask me to pretend I slept through this." Mariane pressed her lips together and nodded. She knelt on the woven rug before the basin. Already she could feel the new moon's pull, a mild pressure on the back of her eyes, as if the sky leaned in to listen. Bone and bloom. She took up the bird's rib and dipped it into the water. A ripple spread, shivering faintly against the basin's rim. Then she scattered the dried petals so they floated, pallid shapes on the dark surface. It looked like a tiny pond waiting for starlight. "Prince of the Underworld," she said, voice steady but too loud in the quiet cottage, "keeper of the bone gardens. I am Mariane Thorne, healer of Ashven. I call to you on the veiled road. I offer bone, that you understand I know what you are. I offer bloom, that you know what I am. I seek a bargain." Nothing happened. The petals drifted, turning in lazy circles. The bone sank slowly to the base of the basin, with a soft clink. Behind her, Alema's beads clicked, faster. Mariane exhaled, letting her magic rise. Vitalis gathered in her chest, in the hollows behind her collarbones. She summoned and shaped it until her skin prickled. Normally she would direct it outward to knit flesh, to soothe fever. Now she pressed it inward, down the length of her arms, into her hands, cupped over the water. "I call to you," she said again, quietly, "not as a child begging for a miracle, but as one keeper of a realm to another. You tend the dead, I tend the living. My sister lies between, and she is being stolen from both of us." Her magic spilled from her palms onto the water's surface. It didn't glow. The only light came from the banked coal and a single stub of a candle. But she could feel the shift as the vitalis mingled with the mundane. The basin became a small inverted sky, a surface stretched thin between worlds. "Follow this," she whispered. "If you care at all for balance, follow this." Silence. Then, gradually, a chill rose, threading through the room, separate from the normal bite of night. The hairs on Mariane's arms lifted. Frost did not form. The air did not grow visibly colder. Instead, warmth retreated, step by careful step. Her mother's muttered prayers faltered. "Mariane," she breathed. "I know," Mariane said, never taking her eyes off the water. The petals stopped moving. The surface of the water stilled, becoming glass smooth. Then, at the very center, a point darkened. Not shadow, not ink, but something like a hole, small and precise. It widened, the way a drop of oil spreads on a pond, except this darkness did not thin, it deepened.
A scent rose from the basin, faint and impossibly far. Dry earth after rain, in a place that had not seen the sun for a long, long time. There was no sulphur, no rot, none of the grotesque odors villagers muttered about when they spoke of the underworld. Just that, earth, and something like stone. A figure began to resolve in the water. Not a reflection. There was no source for it to reflect. At first, it was only a suggestion of form, a distortion in the dark. But little by little, the lines sharpened. Broad shoulders, a long coat, hair like loose silver wire. Eyes opened in the water, pale and many layers, as if light had to travel a very long way to reach them. Mariane's spine stiffened. She forced herself not to look away. The figure in the basin tilted its head, studying her with detached curiosity. When he spoke, the voice did not come from the water or the air, but from somewhere just behind her ears, a whispering that still somehow felt like steel. "You are far from my doors, Mariane Thorne," he said, "and yet you knock." Her mother sucked in a sharp breath. Mariane swallowed. "Prince of the Underworld," she said, inclining her head. "Is one supposed to bow to a reflection? Well, whatever he was, this was his chosen doorway. You heard me." "Difficult not to," he replied. His gaze flicked to the drifting petals, then back to her. "You have poured a great deal of vitalis into a very small space. It shines like a beacon. The dead will be complaining of the light for days." "Then I apologize to the dead," Mariane said. "But I had no other way to reach you." "Few attempt it," he said. "Fewer still are healers. What do you think you're doing, sending life down the road intended for the opposite?" "Seeking balance," Mariane said. "Your own records say as much." Something passed through his expression at that, amusement, perhaps, or faint surprise. "So the brothers up above have not burned all the useful pages." His gaze shifted, and though physically he did not move, she felt the weight of it sweep through the cottage, lingering on the doorway to Selina's room. "Your sister." It wasn't a question. Mariane's throat tightened. "She is sick with something your halls should recognize." "I recognize it," he said. "The soul is slipping, not in the clean way of a ripe death, but fraying sideways as if pulled by a careless hand."
"Caused," he paused, head tilting. "Caused by meddling. Upper-world magics straining to escape their rightful limits." "Can you mend it?" she asked. "Yes," he said, with the same calm he might have used to say the water was wet. The word struck her like a blow. Her hands, still hovering over the basin, trembled. Then, "But," he continued, and she tasted the shape of that word long before he said it, "it is not a matter of simple exchange. I am not a merchant of charms and trinkets. To restore what has been unmade in such a fashion requires a drawing down of power in my realm, a rewriting of sorts. Balance does not move without payment." "I know how trades work," Mariane said hoarsely. "What do you want?" He studied her. Though he spoke of balance and power, there was no obvious hunger in his gaze, none of the gloating greed she'd heard about in stories. If anything, he looked faintly weary. "When the living call to us," he said slowly, "they tend to offer what they think we want. Coin buried in graveyards, blood poured on stone, their own lives flung at our feet as if death were a coin they could toss away and still count." "I'm not offering my life," Mariane said, before she could stop herself. Her mother made a strangled sound in the corner. The prince said. "I had not asked for it." Heat rose to Mariane's face. Then what would satisfy balance? Time, he said. That is the only coin that binds both realms. Yours moves forward. Mine rests. Borrow from me, and I must borrow from you. She forced herself to breathe evenly. How much time? 1 month, he said. You will come to my realm, to the Bone Garden Palace, and spend 1 full turning of the moon there. In that time you will put your vitalis to work, mending what has grown thin and fragile in my domain. You will bring life to the places I cannot reach without unraveling the dead. In return, when you arrive, I will restore your sister's soul to its rightful place. 1 month, Mariane repeated. 30 days. It did not sound like much, and yet under his voice it felt heavier than stone. Her mother found her voice at last. She is not going anywhere, Elena said, rising half out of her chair, beads dangling from one hand. I will not let my daughter go down among the bones, like some... The words failed her. The prince's gaze shifted, and for the first time he acknowledged Elena properly. You call me to your funerals often enough, he said mildly. It seems only fair that once in a great while one of you visits beyond the threshold. The absurdity of that, of death making a dry joke in her sitting room, almost made Mariane laugh. Almost. She looked from her mother to the basin. Her heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic, caged thing. A month in the Underworld. In the stories, mortals went down and never came back, or came back wrong. But Selina... She thought of her sister's hands, always ink-stained from sketching, limp now against the sheets. The way she'd used to lean over Mariane's shoulder while she sorted herbs, asking question after question. The way those questions had stopped, not because Selina had her answers, but because it took too much effort to form them. If I refuse, Mariane said, and ask you to restore her without payment? Then I will refuse in turn, the prince said, and there was no cruelty in it, only a weary inevitability. My realm is not a charity healer. If I broke its laws on a whim, everything you know above would fray. Death free to wander where it liked, life clinging where it should have let go. You would not thank me for that world. Her hands curled into fists. And if I do nothing, she dies. Yes, he said quietly. There it was, one path leading down, one closing at her back. Mariane, Elena whispered, please, there must be another way, another healer, another something. You know there isn't, Mariane said, and hated the truth of it. Her mother stared at her, eyes wide and dark. Then something in her seemed to collapse inward. She sank back to the stool, hands covering her mouth. I cannot make this choice for you, she said thickly. If I did, I'd regret it all my days. But you are my child, Mariane, not his. If you go, her voice broke. I don't know how to bear it. Mariane's vision blurred. She blinked hard. Cry later, she told herself fiercely, when no one is looking, when Selina is well and you have the luxury of tears. She looked down at the prince in the basin. You swear, she said, by whatever holds your realm together, that if I come to you, you will heal my sister. His pale eyes met hers. I swear, he said. The words seemed to ring in the air like struck metal. By bone and root and the river that carries all souls, I swear it. And you will not harm my mother or anyone else in this house. That is not what our bargain concerns, he said, faintly puzzled. Swear it, she insisted. A pause. Then, very well. I swear that while our bargain stands, no harm from my realm will touch this house or those who dwell in it. The knot in her chest loosened. Barely. Then we have terms. We have an outline, he corrected. "A true bargain must be made on my side of the veil." His gaze flicked upward, as if he could see the sky beyond the ceiling. "Midnight is close. If you intend to come, it must be soon." "How?" she asked. "The same way you called me," he said, "but more of you must cross. Stand." She rose to her feet. Her knees felt oddly weak, as if she'd stood too quickly. Her mother made a small sound, but Mariane did not look back. If she did, she might falter. "Place your hands in the water," the prince instructed. She hesitated only a heartbeat before obeying. The water, which had felt cool earlier, now bit at her skin with a strange, dry chill. She set her palms flat, fingers splayed, wrists pressed to the rim. "Close your eyes," he said. "Listen, and do not pull away, no matter how strange it feels. You are a healer. You have touched the boundary before when a patient wavered. This will be more." His voice had softened on that last word, something almost like concern threading through it. Or she might have imagined it. She had no time to decide. She closed her eyes. At once, the world shrank to the basin, to the pressured cold against her skin, to her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The faint sounds of the cottage receded, the creak of wood, the whisper of her mother's breath. In their place came another sound, distant but growing, the rush of water in a deep channel, the faint crackle of something that wasn't fire. "Reach down," the prince's voice murmured, close and far at once. "You sent your magic along the road. Follow it back." She inhaled carefully and let her awareness slide downward, through her arms, into her hands. She had done this before with patients hovering near the edge of death, dipped her senses toward that thin line where vitalis faded and something else waited. Then she'd always pulled back before she went too far. Now she went farther. The water under her palms grew impossibly deep, though her fingers still met the ceramic bottom. Her magic, the soft green-gold stream she knew better than her own face, stretched out before her in her inner sight like a shining thread trailing into darkness. She followed it, hand over hand, heart in her throat. "There is always a threshold," she reminded herself, "always a door. You are not falling, you are walking." The darkness around the thread thickened, but it was not empty. Shapes hinted at themselves, archways of rib and root, pillars of stone veined with faint light. The sound of the distant river grew louder. Something brushed past her awareness, curious and formless. She flinched, but the prince's voice cut through the impulse to flee. "They smell your life," he said. "Do not fear them. You are under my word now." Under his word. They had not sealed the bargain yet, but his oaths still rang in her mind. She pressed on. Abruptly, the pressure changed. It was like stepping from a cramped room into open air. The thread of her magic flared, and before she could brace herself, something caught her. A hand, cool and strong, closing around her outstretched senses and anchoring them. "Got you," the prince said softly. The world turned. For a heartbeat, Mariane felt herself stretch impossibly thin, as if she were a line drawn between 2 points. The cottage, the basin, her mother's stifled cry, all blurred. Then everything snapped into place again, with a sensation like a held breath finally released. She stumbled forward, feet meeting solid ground that was not her worn rug. The chill that had been nibbling at the edges of her awareness swept over her completely, not biting, but pervasive, like the cool of a stone hall untouched by sun. She opened her eyes. She stood beneath an archway grown from bone and stone, interwoven seamlessly. Above, the ceiling curved high, studded with small glints of light like buried stars. Beyond the arch, a corridor stretched, paved with pale tiles edged in darker veins.
Before her, no longer confined to a shallow basin, stood the prince. He was taller than she had thought, though that might have been the way he carried himself, straight-backed, every movement precise. His hair was the color of tarnished silver, falling loose around a face built of clean, unsmiling lines. His eyes were the same as in the water, layered, pale, as if lit from within by a light that had grown used to staying behind a veil. He wore a long coat that might have been woven from shadow and polished bone, the seams fastened with narrow clasps shaped like leaves. At his throat rested a slender piece of carved ivory in the shape of an unfurling fern. "Welcome, Mariane Thorne," he said. His voice no longer echoed inside her head. Here it was simply a sound in the air, rich and even. "To the Bone Garden Palace." She swallowed, throat dry. "You neglected to mention the part where I feel like a letter being pulled through a keyhole." His mouth quirked, almost, but not quite a smile. "Would you have stayed away if I had?" "No," she admitted. "Then there was no point in worrying you unnecessarily." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the corridor. "Come, time moves oddly here, but your month has begun." She glanced once over her shoulder, reflex more than hope. Behind her, the archway's opening showed only darkness, not the comforting glow of her cottage. Her hands trembled at her sides. She curled them into fists until the shaking stilled. "Selina," she thought. "Mother, I'll be back." She stepped forward, crossing fully into the underworld, and walked beside the Prince of Bones into his realm. Mariane expected the underworld to feel oppressive, the way old stories warned, air heavy with despair, walls closing in like the grip of a coffin. Instead, the Bone Garden Palace breathed a strange, hushed openness. Every sound, her footsteps, the faint rustle of her clothes, seemed softened, as if the air took care not to disturb its own stillness. Calrian walked at her side, unhurried. He moved with the quiet certainty of someone who had never needed to rush. "This corridor," he said, "connects the palace proper to the outer gardens." "You will spend most of your time there." She cast him a sharp look. "Because that's where my magic is useful." "Because the palace can shift on newcomers," he corrected mildly. "It will not harm you, but it may rearrange itself." "That sounds like harm." "It is more of an inconvenience," he said. "It listens to its occupants' moods. If you fret, the walls will too." His tone was so perfectly serious that Mariane couldn't tell if he was teasing her or not. She turned her attention forward instead. The corridor opened into a vast space that stole her breath. The bone garden spread out in sweeping terraces beneath a sky of endless dusk. Trees with ivory bark rose like carved sculptures, their branches tangled with translucent leaves that whispered even though no wind touched them. Flowers the color of old parchment grew in clusters along the paths, petals thin as bone shavings. The garden glowed faintly, not from light, but from the memory of light, as though everything here remembered what it had been in the living world and refused to forget completely. "It's—" She searched for a word that wasn't cruel. "Beautiful." Calrian inclined his head slightly. "It tries." "And this is what you want me to mend? In time?" He turned to her, hands clasped behind his back. "Your magic stirred the garden the moment you arrived. It is curious about you. Let it acquaint itself before you attempt anything purposeful." "So I just walk around?" She raised a brow. "That seems like a poor use of my month." "Vitalist magic does not work here the way it does above," he said. "Overexert yourself and the balance between realms shifts too sharply. Start small." "I know how to handle my magic." "Not here you don't." His voice held no judgment, only fact. The dead are not flesh to knit or fever to calm. They are memory and echo. You must treat them differently. Mariane crossed her arms. "If you're going to instruct me, I'd appreciate less mystery and more explanation." He blinked, slowly.
"Very well," he said. "When you touch something here with your life magic, it stirs forgotten memories of what it once was. The garden may respond with growth, or it may respond with the opposite, decay. Rest," he said. "The dead do not fear stillness. But too much rest at once collapses structure. It is my duty to prevent that, and mine to help." His eyes held hers for a long moment. Something flickered there, reluctance perhaps, or uncertainty. Then he nodded once. "Come," he said. "Tavrin will arrange your quarters." Tavrin Ilyard turned out to be less intimidating than his title suggested, though he was certainly strange. He resembled a man in shape and proportion, but his form shimmered at the edges, as if he were carved from bone dust held together by memory alone.
He bowed precisely when he saw them, his voice sounding like smooth pebbles clicking together. "Your quarters are prepared, Lady Thorne." "Just Mariane," she said automatically. "Lady Mariane," Tavrin corrected with the faintest inclination of his head, apparently deciding that was as far as he was willing to compromise. He led her down a hallway where the walls shifted subtly in color, from pale ivory to a muting shade of gray-blue. At the end, he opened a door into a room that, surprisingly, looked welcoming. A bed carved from polished bone, inset with soft cushions of woven shadow fiber. A table etched with curling designs. A basin filled with clear water. There were even flowers on the windowsill, bone-petal lilies that seemed to glow faintly in the half-light. Mariane ran her fingers lightly over one blossom. "Did you do this?" she asked Tavrin. "No," he said, glancing at Calrian. "His Highness arranged it." Heat flickered in her chest. She glanced at Calrian, who looked away as if the wall to his left had suddenly become fascinating. "Oh," she said, unsure what else to say. "You will need rest," Tavrin said. "The crossing takes a toll. I'm fine." "Mortals often say that moments before collapsing," Tavrin replied, hands clasped behind his back. "It is not a criticism, only an observation." Calrian cleared his throat. "We will give you time to settle." They left her alone, the door soft clicking behind them. Only then did Mariane let her shoulders sag. She sat on the bed, which cradled her weight strangely, lightly, as though it was considering what softness meant and doing its best to imitate it. Selena's face flashed in her mind. The prince's oath echoed beneath it. "I swear." She exhaled shakily, rubbing her palms together. Her magic was already stirring in her fingertips, eager and restless. Perhaps exploring the gardens would steady her thoughts. When she emerged again, she found the pathways almost waiting for her. They curved invitingly, edged with bleached vines and delicate bone fronds. She walked slowly, letting her senses expand. Her vitalis hummed, not brightly as in the mortal world, but like a low chord vibrating through the ground. As she passed a cluster of bone-petal flowers, one lifted slightly, turning toward her. She knelt, reaching out gently. Her fingertips brushed the stem. A warm ripple of magic slipped from her and into the plant. The effect was immediate. The petals quivered, trembling like something waking from a long slumber. A faint color, dusty, muted rose, bloomed along the edges, like a memory of life returning. Mariane's breath caught. "Oh!" Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to see Calrian watching, expression unreadable. "You said they might respond," she said softly. "I said they might," he agreed, "not that they would." She stood, brushing off her hands. "Is that good?" "Goodness is a mortal measure," Calrian replied. "But it is promising." "Your realm isn't as empty as people think," she said. "There's beauty here, quiet beauty." A faint line appeared between his brows. "It was not always so quiet. What changed?" He hesitated. "Many things. Time, neglect, the border between realms shifting, duties pulling harder in one direction than another."
Mariane sensed more beneath those words, but pushing him now would accomplish nothing. She walked again, and he fell into step beside her. "Do the spirits ever talk to you?" she asked, watching a few translucent shapes drift among the skeletal shrubs. "They sing," he said, "in their own way. Can I hear them?" "Perhaps in time." His gaze slid to her. "Do not worry. They are not dangerous." "I'm not afraid," she said. "You should be. A little fear keeps mortals from being reckless. I saved my sister from falling out of a tree when she was 7 by climbing higher than she did. I don't do a little fear." He huffed, so faintly she barely caught it. "I am beginning to understand." They walked until the ever-dusk deepened into a cooler shade. Calrian stopped beside a low arch covered in woven bone vines. "Here is where you will begin tomorrow," he said, "a section of the garden that has been dormant for too long." Mariane peered inside. The ground beyond was pale and tangled, vines brittle as old parchment, flowers tightly furled and colorless. "It looks lonely," she murmured. "It is." Calrian's tone was neutral, but something in it tugged at her heart. It once grew vibrant pathways for new spirits. It has forgotten how. "I can try to remind it. I know," he said quietly. Their eyes met, and the moment stretched between them like a held breath. Then he stepped back. "Tavrin will fetch you for your evening meal." Mariane blinked. "Meal? You still require them," he said, as though it surprised him. "It would be inconvenient for you to faint after one day." She crossed her arms lightly. "I don't faint." "You do exaggerate your invulnerability." She opened her mouth to argue, and stopped when she noticed the faintest flicker at the corner of his mouth. Mischief. Dry, reserved, but unmistakable. "Very well," she said. "I'll eat." "Good," he replied, brushing past her lightly. "I would prefer you stayed conscious." The remark shouldn't have warmed her, but it did. In her quarters that evening, Tavrin brought a tray of food, bread that tasted faintly of herbs she didn't recognize, steaming broth, a dish of soft fruit that glowed faintly. When she asked what it was, he said only, "Sustenance shaped for the living." After he left, Mariane felt uneasy restlessness coil in her. She opened her hand, letting a small flicker of vitalis spark in her palm. Normally, the magic comforted her. Here, it pulsed unevenly, energetic, curious, almost impatient. "It's not just the garden that's getting used to me," she muttered. A soft tap sounded at her door. She opened it to find Calrian standing there. He looked as though he hadn't intended to knock twice. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No." He paused. "I thought I should check on you." "Check on me?" Her voice lifted. "I'm not going to wilt like your flowers." "They do not wilt," he said defensively. "They retreat." She smiled despite herself. "And you thought I might be retreating?" "You crossed the veil." His gaze softened. "Mortals often feel disoriented on their first night. I wanted to ensure you were steady." Mariane leaned lightly against the doorframe. "Thank you," she said simply. Calrian inclined his head, but he didn't leave. For a beat too long they stood there, her in the doorway, him framed by the corridor's dim glow. Neither spoke, neither needed to. Finally, he said, "Rest, Mariane Thorne. Tomorrow we'll ask more of you." "And of you," she replied. His expression flickered, unreadable as ever. "Good night." "Good night, Prince Calrian." She closed the door gently. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding, her pulse quickening in her throat, not from fear, but from some other warmth she refused to name yet. In the Underworld, the realm of quiet bones and half-remembered gardens, Mariane found herself unsettled in a way no sickness or shadow had ever caused. Not by dread, but by the slow and unignorable feeling that she was no longer merely a visitor. The realm was beginning to respond to her, and its prince, guarded and solemn, was beginning to as well.
Mariane woke the next morning to a soft, resonant chime that vibrated through the walls like a plucked string. It wasn't sound, not exactly, but something that traveled along her bones. She sat straight up, blinking at the dim light filtering through her window. The underworld never shifted to day or night, yet something in the glow felt morning-like, renewed. She dressed quickly, smoothing the wrinkled fabric with a practiced hand. When she opened her door, Tavrin was waiting, with his hands folded behind his back. "Lady Mariane, His Highness requests your presence in the Eastern Gardens." "Requests," Mariane repeated, raising a brow. "He does not summon mortals," Tavrin clarified. "It causes unnecessary panic." "I don't panic." "Then you are unique among your kind." Tavrin led the way, drifting more than walking. They passed corridors where bone pillars curved into archways, and drifting lights glimmered like fallen stars. When they reached the garden's entrance, Tavrin stopped and bowed. "His Highness is inside." "You may call if you require anything." Mariane stepped forward. Calrian stood near a cluster of bone-woven hedges, hands clasped behind his back. His coat fell around him like folded wings, pale hair stirring in a non-existent breeze. He turned when he sensed her, the faintest shift in his expression acknowledging her arrival. "You slept," he observed. "You say that like it's surprising." "Mortal dreams tend to drift when they occur in my realm." She blinked. "Drift how?" He hesitated. "If you feel memories pulling oddly, or if time seems to stretch, tell me." "That's vague." "It is the nature of dreams," he said simply. Before she could press him, he gestured to the dormant section he'd shown her the night before. "It is ready." Mariane knelt beside the pale, tangled vines. She placed 2 fingers against one of them and closed her eyes. Vitalis stirred eagerly, like a caged creature stretching its wings. Slowly, very slowly, she let it trickle out. Warmth moved from her hand into the vine, followed by a faint pulse of color. The plant shivered, brittle texture softening beneath her fingertips. A single bud unfurled, trembling like a first breath. A soft sound escaped her, a gasp of awe. When she opened her eyes, Calrian was watching her, not with curiosity, not with duty, with something perilously close to hope. "This place remembers life," she murmured. "It does," he said quietly. "But memory alone is not enough anymore. It needed something living to remind it how." She rose to her feet, brushing off her palms. "This is only the beginning. I can do more." "Yes," he said, but his expression darkened faintly. "And that is what concerns me." "What concerns you?" "Your magic. It is strong, stronger than I anticipated. If you give too much of it to this place, it will take more than you intend to offer." Mariane crossed her arms. "I know how to pace myself." "Not here," he repeated calmly. "Vitalis responds differently to Mortalis. The 2 forces attract." "Like magnets?" "Like tides," he said. "Irresistible if you move too close." She met his gaze steadily. "Are you afraid I'll lose myself?" "Yes." The honesty in that single word caught her off guard. She looked away. "I promised Selina I'd return," she said. "I won't break that." His jaw tightened slightly. "Your promise binds you to the living. Mine binds me to the dead. Neither of us is permitted to fail." Mariane turned back to the vines, letting her magic flow more cautiously this time. She worked for hours. She thought it was hours anyway, time slipping like sand. And the barren garden responded with shy, gradual awakening. New buds, softened stems, a faint recoloring of leaves. Between tasks, she and Calrian spoke in pauses and quiet exchanges. She learned he'd taken the throne long before her great-grandmother had been born. That he didn't choose the role. Mortalis chose him. That most emotions dulled over time in the underworld. Duty required it. "But some things," he said quietly, "refuse to dull." She didn't ask what he meant. By the time she returned to her quarters, her hands trembled with overuse. Tavrin brought her a bowl of shimmering broth that tasted like starlight and herbs. She drank it greedily. Then she slept, and for the first time since arriving, she dreamed. She stood in a field of living flowers, bright and full of color. Wind danced through their petals. She turned, and the flowers turned with her, bowing gently. Then the color began to drain. The wind quieted. The field dimmed to bone white. A shadow stepped through the flowers, tall and familiar, his eyes layered with distant light. Mariane reached for him. Her fingers passed through him like smoke. She woke with a sharp breath, heart racing. Her hands shook. "He said dreams drift," she said under her breath. "It's just the realm acclimating." But she wasn't sure. The next day, the bone garden felt different, more alert, almost aware of her. Plants turned subtly in her direction when she passed. Vines stirred faintly, as though greeting her. Calrian noticed as well. "It seems the garden likes you," he said as they walked one of the main paths. His tone was neutral, but she heard something beneath it. Wary fascination. "I'm not sure that's good," she said. "Places shouldn't have opinions. This one does. Does it have thoughts?" He considered. "Not as mortals understand them, but it remembers, it feels." "That's comforting." "Is it?" She shot him a sideways look. "Does the palace like you?" "It respects me," he said after a pause. "I do not know if it likes me." "You sound offended." "I am not offended," he said quickly. "I simply wonder whether liking is a requirement for effective rulership." "It's not," Mariane said with a small smile, "but it helps." Calrian's expression shifted, barely, a hairline crack in the cool mask he wore. "It has been a long time since anyone spoke to me that way." "What way?" "Honestly." She blinked. "I'm not trying to be impolite." "You're not," he said. "You speak to me as if I were a person." "You are a person." His silence stretched, not heavy, just fragile. Then he motioned toward another section of the garden. "There is something you should see." They walked beneath an arch of carved bone that spiraled like seashells, into a grove where the plants grew stranger, less like flowers, more like skeletal trees whose branches grew in fractal patterns. At the center of the grove lay a large, dormant structure, a pool of still, pale water surrounding a platform of bone petals. "This is a memory pool," Calrian said. "It records echoes of the past. Sometimes, with guidance, it can show what once was." Mariane approached the edge. "Why show me this? You should understand the cost of what you are doing." He stepped forward, placing a hand near the water. It rippled, not outward, but inward, spiraling down. When the surface stilled, images formed beneath it. The bone garden blazing with color, spirits moving like dancers through vibrant pathways, the sky bright with drifting lights. Mariane's breath caught. It was alive. Yes. What happened? Mortalis weakened. Boundaries shifted. The living feared us more each century. Their neglect became our fading, and our fading became theirs. Mariane felt the garden around her, listening to their voices. "It misses the living," she murmured. Calrian nodded once. "And it remembers loss more keenly than I do." She stood there a long moment, absorbing the weight of it, the echo of beauty, the ache of what had been. Then she looked at him. "We can fix this." "You can fix parts of it," he said quietly. "But all things have a cost." She lifted her chin. "Then tell me the cost." He hesitated. His eyes, those pale, layered eyes, shifted away. "Not yet," he said. "I am still searching for a way to lessen it." Her pulse kicked. "Calrian, what are you hiding?" He didn't answer. Not with words. Not with silence either. Just a look, heavy, conflicted, painful. And for the first time, Mariane felt fear. Not for herself, for him. Later that evening, Tavrin found Mariane seated beside a cluster of newly revived bone petal blooms, her hands shaking faintly from the day's exertion. "Lady Mariane," he said, "you must rest. Your magic is overextended." "I'm fine." "You are not," Tavrin said flatly. "His Highness noticed." Her heart skipped. "He did?" "He notices everything concerning this realm," Tavrin said carefully, "and everyone who affects it." Mariane stared at the pale blossoms. "He's hiding something." "Yes." "What is it?" Tavrin paused, too long. "I cannot say." "Cannot or will not?" "Both." She looked up sharply. "Is this about the ritual to save Selena?" Tavrin winced. Spirits didn't wince, but he did. "What do I need to know?" she asked, voice trembling. "That the ritual requires more than His Highness has told you," Tavrin said softly. "Not because he wishes to deceive you, but because he fears the truth would drive you away." Her breath hitched. "What kind of more?" "Your life magic," Tavrin said. "A great deal of it." "That was expected." "No," Tavrin said, "not merely the exertion of it. The ritual draws permanently. It will take a piece of you, a price that cannot be given lightly." Mariane felt sick.
"Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he is afraid."
"Of what?"
"That you will hate him," Tavrin said. "Or worse, that you will stay." A cold tremor ran through her. Stay? Why would staying be worse? Tavrin's gaze softened. "Because His Highness is not meant to hold anything living for long. Attachment unravels him." Before she could answer, a presence stirred behind her. Calrian. She stiffened. He stood at the edge of the path, shadows sliding off him like water, his expression unreadable, his hands clenched at his sides. "Tavrin," he said quietly, "leave us." Tavrin bowed and drifted away. Mariane rose slowly, her breath unsteady. "You should have told me." His jaw tightened. "I was trying to spare you." "You don't get to spare me from the truth." He stepped toward her. "I was searching for another way. And if you don't find one?" Silence. Her heart cracked a little. "Calrian," she whispered, "you promised to save Selena, but you didn't tell me the cost." "I know. I needed the truth." "I know," he said again, voice rougher, "and I failed you." She swallowed hard. "Why didn't you trust me?" He closed the last step between them, not touching, never touching, but near enough she felt the cold warmth of him. "Because," he said, voice barely steady, "I did not want to watch your light dim, and I feared that if I told you the truth, you would never look at me again." Mariane's breath shook in her throat. Their eyes locked, hers filled with hurt and fear, his with centuries of careful emptiness cracking at the edges, and something shifted between them. Not magic, not obligation. Something alive, something real. "Calvian," she breathed. He flinched at his name on her lips, as if it struck him. "I will find another way," he said. "I swear it, even if it breaks me." "Don't say that." "It is true." She opened her mouth, but no sound came, because at that moment, the ground beneath their feet trembled softly, then steadied. The garden responded. A soft bloom opened near them, one Mariane hadn't touched, its petals flushing with faint color. Calrian stared at it, at her, and for a moment, the underworld held its breath. Then he stepped back sharply, shuddering whatever emotion had been rising. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we begin again." He turned and walked away before she could speak. Mariane stood alone among the slowly waking flowers, her heart thundering, her magic quivering in her hands. She had come to save her sister, but now, impossibly, she feared she might lose something else she never meant to find. Mariane barely slept.
When she drifted off, she dreamed of paths splitting beneath her feet, one leading to her sister's warm, sunlit smile, the other to a pale throne surrounded by bone flowers, where Calrian stood alone with his hands clasped behind his back, as if bracing for someone who would never come. Both dreams hurt, both felt true. By the time Tavrin came to fetch her, her eyes were heavy, but her thoughts were sharp. She followed him wordlessly through the shifting halls until they reached a courtyard where Calrian waited. He looked different today, still impossibly composed, still carved from restraint, but tension clung to him like mist. His eyes, usually unreadable, carried something almost fragile. "Good morning," he said. It was such a simple greeting that it startled her. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. "We have work," he continued. "The garden stirred strongly last night, too strongly." He led her to a pathway that had cracked open like an overripe shell. Bone vines burst upward from the fissure, tangled and glowing faintly gold at the tips, her magic's color. "This is from me," Mariane said softly. "Yes." His tone was not accusatory, only tired. "You gave too much again." "I didn't mean to." "You don't have to mean it," he said. "Your presence alone presses on the realm. It awakens things." She touched one of the glowing vines gently. The light dimmed at her touch, as if soothed. "You don't have to bear this alone," she said. "I do," he replied, but there was no force behind it, only habit. They worked side by side, guiding the magic back into balance. Mariane eased her vitalis from the overgrown vines. Calrian steadied the pathways with mortalis. Their magics touched, never fully merging, but brushing, like fingertips hovering inches apart. Every time their energies met, a shiver passed through her. Not painful, not frightening, just alive. When the imbalance settled, Calrian straightened slowly, pressing a hand to the bridge of his nose. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Yes." "You don't look it." He lowered his hand. "The realm's shift takes a toll, and my emotions are not helping." It was the first time he had admitted such a thing aloud. Mariane stepped toward him. "Calrian, you can talk to me." "No," he said quickly, then gentled his voice. "No, it is better if I don't." "Why not?" His jaw flexed. "Because the more I feel, the harder it is to control the mortalis that sustains this place. Emotion is corrosive." "That isn't fair," she whispered. "It is the nature of things." She shook her head. "Not all emotions destroy. Some heal." He looked at her then, really looked. For a heartbeat, something unguarded flickered across his face. Then he turned away. "We must rest, both of us." But rest was impossible. By afternoon, the palace trembled again. Soft at first, then harder, like distant thunder rolling through bone floors. Tavrin rushed toward them in a swirl of dust and light. "Your Highness," he said, voice taut, "the north garden is collapsing." Calrian stiffened. "Show me." They hurried down the corridors, the tremors growing sharper. When they reached the north garden, Mariane's breath caught. The skeletal trees here sagged inward, branches drooping like exhausted limbs. Vines that once lay dormant now curled in on themselves, as if retreating from unseen cold. Even the air felt thinner. "What's causing this?" Mariane asked. Calrian surveyed the damage, face drawn. Imbalance. Too much life in one part of the realm, too little in another. "This is because of me," Mariane said. Calrian didn't answer. That was answer enough. She rushed forward and pressed her hand to one of the withering trunks. Her magic answered, eager to flow. She let a small, steady pulse go into the tree. The ground steadied beneath her feet. Color, soft and muted, returned to the bark. Breath returned to the air. Calrian exhaled. It wasn't relief exactly, more like resignation. "You can heal it," he said quietly.
But it's taking too much. Yes. Tavrin stepped forward. Your Highness, the imbalance will continue as long as she is here. The realm is feeding off her. Mariane swallowed. Then I'll pull back my magic. You cannot, Tavrin said. Your presence alone stirs the garden. So what do we do? Calrian's voice cut through the rising tension. The ritual. Mariane turned to him sharply. You said you were looking for another way. I am, he said, eyes darkening. But I have not found one. And now you're telling me we have to do the ritual early? If the realm continues to destabilize, he said, it will collapse into the river of souls, and I will collapse with it. We do not have weeks, we have days. Silence hung between them, heavy and cold. Marianne's hands curled. Then tell me the truth now, all of it. Calrian hesitated. Only a second, but it felt like eternity. The ritual will restore your sister, he said, but it requires tying a portion of your life magic permanently to my realm. It will weaken you, it will age you slightly, and it will bind you to this place for as long as you live. Marianne's breath stilled in her chest. Bind me how? A thread, a connection between our souls. You will feel the realm's shifts. You will feel me. And you? She whispered. What does it bind you to? His voice lowered. You. The word vibrated through her, cold, fragile, devastating. If you die, he said, the realm shatters. If the realm collapses, you will be pulled down with it. Mariane stared.
Why would you agree to such a ritual? Because you asked me to save her, he said, voice strained. And because He stopped himself, but the unfinished word hung between them like a trembling bridge. Mariane stepped back, shaking. You should have told me. I know, he whispered. I would have come anyway. He inhaled sharply, as if that admission wounded him more than anything else. I did not want the weight of that choice to fall on you. It's mine to carry, she said, not yours. He closed his eyes. I know. Another tremor shook the garden, the ground shifting beneath them. Tavrin spoke abruptly. The realm is fracturing. You must decide. Now. Calrian turned to her. Mariane! But she stepped away from him, heart pounding in her ears. I need to see my sister, she said. Calrian froze. Mariane lifted her chin. If this ritual ties me to death, I need to look once more at the living. Please. Calrian's jaw tightened. The veil can be crossed only once more. If you return above, time accelerates. A minute here, an hour there. I know. Then you may go, he whispered. But you must return by the next tilt of the shadow. If you don't, I will, she said softly. I promised. He bowed his head, not in command, but in surrender. Then go. Tavrin guided her to a small chamber with a shallow pool. Its surface darkened as Calrian lifted his hand. The water shimmered and split like a curtain. Mariane turned back once. Calrian stood in the doorway, still as carved stone, but his eyes glowed with a desperate, unspoken plea. Come back, he said. Her heart cracked. I will, she whispered. She stepped through. The world above was brighter than she remembered, the air sharp and alive. Mariane staggered into the cottage, gasping. Her mother shot up from her stool, eyes wide. Mariane! Oh, thank the heavens! Mariane embraced her tightly. How long? A day and a half, her mother said, trembling. Selina, she's still here. Barely, but still here. Mariane rushed to the bedside. Selina lay pale as milk, but her breath still fluttered. Weak, fragile, fighting. Mariane knelt, taking her hand. Hey, little star, I'm back. Selina's eyelids twitched. Marianne's heart constricted. I made a promise, she whispered. I'm keeping it. Her mother's voice was soft. The prince, did he answer you? Yes, Mariane said, standing slowly.
And now I have to go back. Her mother grabbed her wrist. Mariane, are you sure? No, Mariane said honestly, but I know what choice I can live with. Her mother's eyes filled. I'm proud of you. Mariane swallowed hard. Tell her stories until I return. She kissed Selena's forehead.
I'll see you soon. Then she stepped back to the basin. The water no longer shimmered, but she closed her eyes, breathed once, and whispered, Calrian. The water stirred, and the underworld opened beneath her again. She didn't fall. She arrived hard, stumbling on the bone garden path. Tavrin was waiting, tense with urgency. It worsens, he said. You must find His Highness. Where is he? In the heart of the garden. Mariane ran. The pathways twisted around her, vines curling, flowers shaking as the realm trembled. Lights flickered overhead. The air felt thinner, colder, desperate. She found Calrian standing beside a massive, cracked pillar of bone and root, his hands pressed to it as mortalis poured from him in slow, painful pulses. Calrian, she cried. He turned, and for the first time since she met him, he looked afraid. You came back, he breathed. Of course I did. He closed his eyes in relief so raw it startled her. The realm is falling apart. We must do the ritual now. Then tell me what to do. He reached for her, not touching, but close enough that she felt the cold warmth radiating from him. Give me your hands. Mariane lifted them slowly. Calrian took them. His touch was cool as river water, gentle as breath. A shock ran through her. Magic meeting magic, life touching death, warm intertwining with cold. The garden erupted around them, flowers blooming and retreating, vines trembling, the sky flickering like a dying flame. Mariane, he said, voice breaking, this will hurt. I'm not afraid, she whispered. I am. Their fingers tightened. The ritual began, and the realm itself held its breath. The first sensation was pain, sharp, rushing, blinding. Mariane felt her magic pulled outward in a sweeping current, as if the garden had become a great breath inhaling through her soul. Vitalis raced through her veins, spiraling into Calrian's hands, through his arms, and down into the fractured heart of the underworld. Her knees buckled. Calrian caught her before she fell. Steady, he murmured, though his own voice shook. Stay with me. The ritual circle, an invisible boundary marked by the eager trembling of bone vines, flared around them. Light surged from the ground in braided threads, the soft gold of Mariane's life magic tangled with the pale silver blue of Calrian's mortalis. They rose like two rivers forced together. Her breath hitched. Calrian, it's too much. I will take only what is required, he said through clenched teeth. I swear it. But she felt him holding back, straining against the instinct of the realm to drink deeper. He fought his own magic, anchoring it, shaping it, so it only pulled enough to mend the underworld's foundation and to restore the stolen part of Selena's soul. The bone pillar before them glowed, cracks sealing one by one, the sky steadying overhead, the trembling ground smoothing beneath their feet. Mariane gasped as another wave of pain knifed through her. Tell me, it's working. Please tell me. Yes, he said, voice breaking. It's working. She clutched his coat, fingers digging in. Calrian bent his forehead to hers, as though the closeness alone might shield her from the worst. You carry so much light, he whispered, and still you give. Because I choose to, Mariane breathed. Not because you demanded it. His inhale shuddered. That is what terrifies me. The world lurched, then stilled. The ritual snapped closed like a tether pulled tight, and a shock wave of energy swept through the garden. Flowers unfurled in sudden bloom. Trees straightened. Colors deepened. A chorus of faint, distant voices sighed.
1,000 spirits exhaling in relief, and Mariane collapsed. Calrian caught her before she hit the ground, falling to his knees with her in his arms. "Mariane!" His voice was raw. "Mariane, open your eyes." Her lashes fluttered. The world swam hazily behind them. "Is Selina?" Her voice barely shaped the words. "Yes." Calrian pressed her hand to his chest, as if anchoring himself to her. "Her soul is whole again. She will live." A weak, relieved smile touched her lips. Then her body sagged, spent. Calrian lifted her carefully, cradling her against him. His breath trembled as he looked over the garden. No longer dying, but glowing faintly with new life, pulsing in colors he hadn't seen in centuries. He had restored his realm, but he had nearly broken her to do it. Mariane woke slowly to the sensation of cool linen and the faint scent of bone lilies. Her eyelids felt heavy, but when she blinked them open, light filtered through the carved windows of her chamber, painting pale patterns across the floor. She turned her head. Calrian sat beside her bed, not standing, not pacing, sitting, with his hands clasped loosely in his lap, shoulders bowed in a posture almost like prayer. His coat was gone, replaced by a simple dark tunic. His silver hair fell loose around his face, a stark contrast to the shadows beneath his eyes. He looked exhausted, unraveled, human. Her voice came out a rasp. "How long was I asleep?" His head snapped up. In an instant he was kneeling at her side. Relief broke across his face, quiet, powerful, uncontrollable. "A full turning of the shadow," he said. "Longer than I hoped, shorter than I feared." She tried to sit. He steadied her gently. His hands were warm today, strange, but comforting. "Did it work?" she asked. He nodded. "The realm is stable, the balance restored." He hesitated. "And your sister, she woke shortly after you collapsed." Mariane's throat tightened. Tears formed, not of pain, but pure relief.
"She woke," she whispered. "She asked for you," he said softly. Mariane covered her face, letting the tears fall freely. Calrian did not touch her, but he bowed his head, as if the sight of her relief was something he had no right to witness, yet could not turn away from. When she lowered her hands, his expression had shifted again, carefully composed, but no longer sealed shut. Cracks of emotion glimmered through it. "You kept your promise," she said. "I did, but I did not keep mine to protect you from the cost." She touched her chest lightly. Her magic felt dimmer, quieter, like a candle burning lower than before. "It hurt," she admitted, "but I'm still me." His jaw tightened. "You lost years of your lifespan. Only a few, but still, too many." "I'd have given more," she said, without hesitation. He flinched. "Do not say that. It's true." "Then let it be unspoken truth," he said quietly, "because I cannot bear to hear it again." Something warm unfurled in her chest. Soft, dangerous, real. She reached out, brushing her fingers against the sleeve of his tunic. Light contact. Barely there. Still, he froze. "Calrian," she whispered, "I don't regret any of it." "You should," he murmured, leaning into her touch despite himself. "You gave more than you should have, risked more than I deserved." "Stop deciding my choices for me," she said gently. "You're not the only one capable of sacrifice." His eyes softened, so slowly, so painfully, that she felt her own heart echo the motion. "You are going to leave," he said. The words weren't bitter, they were simply breaking. "My sister needs me," she said softly. "My mother too. So I must release you." His voice barely held steady. "The realm is stable now. The tether is light enough that you can walk freely." She blinked. "Release me?" "You came by bargain," he said. "You must leave by choice." Her fingers curled in the fabric of his sleeve. "What if my choice is to stay?" His breath caught. "Mariane," he whispered, as if her name alone were a plea. "You do not belong among the dead." "And you don't belong alone," she said. He closed his eyes, shaken. "Say it," she said quietly.
Whatever you were going to tell me before the ritual. His voice trembled. If I do, I may not be able to let you go. Then say it, he repeated. Slowly, like a man stepping across the thinnest of bridges, he opened his eyes. Emotion, raw and unmasked, gleamed in them like layered moonlight. I care for you, he said, more than I have allowed myself to care for anything in centuries. And the more life you brought to this realm, the more I feared the day you would leave it. Mariane felt her heart open like a wound and a flower all at once.
Calrian? But, he said, voice steadying only through effort, I will not ask you to stay. You must choose the living world. It needs you. Your family needs you. And you? She whispered. I am not meant to be chosen. She shook her head, tears rising again, but this time not from loss. Calrian Veyr, she said fiercely, Prince of Bone and Garden, Keeper of Balance. For the first time in my life, I feel like I see someone as clearly as I see the living. You. Not your realm, not your duty. You. His breath trembled. And, he whispered, and I am choosing to come back. He went utterly still. You are? Yes, she said. I will return to my sister. But when she's strong, when my mother is steady, when the mortal world no longer needs me as it does today, I will return. Calrian's expression broke like dawn across snow, fragile and bright. Not for a bargain, she said, not because of duty, but because I want to. Because life and death aren't opposites, they're halves, and I've lived my whole life on one side. She touched his cheek. He leaned into her hand, breath unsteady. I want both, she whispered, if you'll have me. Calrian closed his eyes. The underworld, impossibly, softened, its dusklight warming, its garden humming with quiet anticipation. When he opened his eyes again, they shone. I will always have you, he said. He didn't kiss her. It wasn't time yet, wasn't needed yet. Instead, he pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture older than language, older than bargains. Life meeting death, warmth meeting coolness. Two realms touching gently, willingly, without fear. You will come back. I will, she promised. When she stepped toward the veil that would return her to the mortal world, Calrian watched her go, not with the emptiness of a prince of the dead, but with the hope of a man who had learned how to feel again. As she crossed the threshold, the garden behind her bloomed softly in her wake. And somewhere deep in the underworld, a single bone-petal flower opened in full color for the first time in centuries.